Hi, everybody. Welcome to Heroes of Hope. We're so excited that we can come in and be with you today and be able to bring this new show that we're starting a whole new season, so we're excited about it. So I want to encourage you to turn around and call your friends and family and let them know that today we're going to be having a really, really powerful discussion about treatment and how different ways of treatment, how we need to come together to be able to knock out addiction. And that's been my big thing, knock out addiction. And so we want to be able to talk about that today. But before we do that with my special guest, I want to share with you something that's taking place, and here it is. They're going to put it up on screen, and this is an event that's taking place, and it's called the Family Recovery Conference. And it's on Saturday, October 26, 2019. It's at 9 a.m. to 12 noon, and it's hosted by Anchor House and Celebrate Hope Recovery Center. And for those of you that don't know, I'm the director of the Celebrate Hope Recovery Center. And we've come together to put together this conference so that we can not only touch the lives of individuals that are struggling in addiction or in recovery treatment, but there's a lot of families that have been devastated behind it. So we want to encourage you to lock in with this. There's many organizations that are going to be a part of it. Some of those organizations are like the District Attorney's Office Hope Program, also TISA, the YMCA, of course, Anchor House and ourselves, and then also there's many other organizations that we're just waiting on right now. Oasis, the state of New York, they are going to be a part of it. We're going to be covering topics from mental illness to managing addiction to faith-based recovery programs and how it all fits together. But most of all, there's going to be a professional panel of people put together for a time of Q&A. Questions and answers. And I know that there's a lot of you out there that have a lot of questions in these areas. So on that day, we're going to be able to make a tremendous difference in this area. So look at that flyer, log it down. If you go to our Facebook page, and that is Celebrate Hope SI, you can get all this information also. So check that out and be a part of it. So at this time, we want to continue the show, and I just wanted to make mention to you that I have somebody that's very dear to my heart. He's a friend of mine, and he's on both sides of the fence. He knows a lot about different things, and his name is Reverend Ralph Rivera, and I want to welcome him to the show. Thank you for coming, Ralph. I greatly appreciate you coming, and the reality is that people, before we go into this, people would probably want to know a little more about you. You know, I know that, I wrote down a bunch of stuff, and I know that you are a substance abuse counselor. I know that you're CASAC 2. You have a master's degree in divinity. You're a New York State chaplain, and there's many other things, but there's so many other things about Ralph Rivera, right? And in reference to the father, the husband, and all this stuff. Why don't you share a little bit about your personal life or your personal self, and so that we can just tie that in, and then we're going to get into this good conversation.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here. When people say Ralph Rivera, the Reverend Ralph Rivera, Chaplain Ralph Rivera, and CASAC, master's degree, it all comes down to Ralph Rivera, the addict. Once upon a time, somebody took the time out to help me. Many years ago, I struggled with the disease of addiction, but for the grace of God and the help of others, I was able to weather through and utilize the opportunity that God gave me to help others.
That's awesome. So you're married, you have a family. How's that? How many kids do you have? How's that work?
Well, I've been married to my wife since 2007. She's born again, the whole family. We've all accepted the Lord into our lives. We have 7 children together, a couple of pets.
And they're part of the family.
They're part of the family as well. God is good.
Amen. It's important that the people know when we bring somebody on the show that there's a personal side to the professional side.
Absolutely.
And that's why I always give that opportunity for people to make it personal, because people that know me know that I like to just keep it real. And so hearing you share what you shared in reference to the life you came out of, it just relates to who I am. those that are out there, and if you don't know, it's because you haven't been tuning in. You need to keep tuning in. But the reality is that I'm an ex-drug addict, and in the '80s I was a mess, and in '84 I started my journey in finding out that there was a God that loved me when I had no idea that there was anything like that.
Amen.
And my life's been turned upside down. But the show's not about me, but I'm glad you shared that, because there's so many people that are out there that share the testimony that we both have, okay?
Well, what I've come to understand in time is that drugs doesn't discriminate.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It really doesn't.
It's like the drug epidemic right now in Staten Island.
Exactly.
It goes from the suburbs to the inner city, and it doesn't care, who has medical insurance and who don't. It doesn't matter how big your house is or if you're homeless. It has no boundaries.
Doesn't matter if you're from the north side or from the south side.
That's right.
Addiction is addiction.
Yeah, and I see that firsthand every day at the Celebrate Hope Recovery Center, and I'm sure you do too in your way of life and what you do.
I do.
But I also want to I want to design this whole time together in conversation, because something's been so heavy in my heart, and it's been in my heart, but then it's been also people asking me questions and sharing their concerns about different things. And one of the things is, especially in the faith walk, in the church life, and that goes across the board. I mean, evangelical, Catholic, don't matter what piece of the faith you're in. So let's get that out of the way.
What's your denomination?
Yeah, it's and sometimes people want to put a tag on it. I'm not talking about anything with a tag.
Right.
I'm talking about just people that believe.
Right.
And they struggle with understanding the issues of mental illness, or the treatment of mental illness, or the treatment of managing an addiction, and how that platform gets played out when someone believes that God can set a person free, and yet the person has something that's broken. And I'm wondering if you can share with us a little something in your journey as a substance abuse counselor of what are your thoughts concerning people that might be asking that type of question today in reference to faith mixing with mental illness, mixing with managing addiction, because I believe there's people on both sides of this fence that are struggling with, it's like a taboo conversation.
Correct.
And people, it's like a gap between the two.
There's a
But yet there's so many people that are in need of help, and they're kind of trapped behind ignorance of just not knowing.
Right.
And I'm hoping that this conversation will kind of help them. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, what I hear you saying is that there's a lot of barriers, and these barriers create what they call misunderstandings, and these misunderstandings are based around stigmas. People have their own personal opinion and their own personal beliefs about what you're discussing, and rightfully so. Everybody's entitled to their opinion and to their belief. I speak for me, from my experiences, where I've seen that the power of prayer does heal, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. Let's put that out there. God heals. This day and age, God heals. But I also believe that God provided mankind with the intelligence that he required in order to treat certain mental illnesses. And I believe that medicine plays a role in that. I believe that God gave man the ability to become these doctors, to become these psychiatrists, I got to stay in my lane. I like to say that a lot as a substance abuse counselor when I meet patients and I realize that there's a little more here than just a substance abuse disease, that there's, several things going on, that there's what we call in the trade a dual diagnosis. At that point, as a substance abuse counselor, I know where I end. But I also know my responsibility to that individual is to provide him or her with the best services possible. Right. And that requires me to make a referral out. Out to who? 9 times out of 10, we're not referring out to the clergy.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's not the procedure. Although I believe that, there's a role for the clergy. There's a place for that. But I also believe that there is also a place for the referral to go to the appropriate referral source, and that would be somebody that's in the field of mental health.
Yeah. So I've noticed in working with Celebrate Hope Recovery Center, I've noticed that I've had individuals that have come and they're addicted to drugs, And then, again, we don't deal with the mental assessments and stuff like that. We refer them out and things to that effect. We, like you said, stay in your lane. We understand that. So we don't try to do something that we're not called to do. But in the same token, we're embracing them in their illness or their situation.
Right.
And so when a person goes into detox and they go through the assessments that they need to go through,
Right.
and I send someone in with let's say a heroin problem, and when they come out, they want to come back to be treated as an outpatient with us
Right.
on a recovering coaching basis or whatever, and now we find out they have 3 other medications that they're on.
Okay.
And it's like methadone, Suboxone, or you know what I mean? Different medications that they find themselves on. I've noticed that for me, at the beginning, I didn't understand it.
Right.
So as a pastor and as a recovery coach, I kind of went through changes because I was hoping they would come out with no addiction at all.
Total
and then
abstinence.
and then we could help them right where they're at. And to find out that that's not what was happening, so that was kind of a challenge. But noticing that those people that literally wanted to embrace what we were offering, that today, this very moment,
Right.
they're not on any medications. And not because we told them to come off the medications, but because we provided what they needed in the sense of building up their faith, building up their confidence,
Right.
building up their inner being, becoming more whole within who they are, their identity within their lives. And in turn, they went back to their doctors and said, hey, I'm not going to be on this for the rest of my life, am I?
Right.
I don't want to be on this and things to that effect. And so that literally looks like a platform to me now,
Right.
where I was able to work with someone. Like we had one conversation one time, and you said that it's like MAT, right? M-A-T. And so maybe you can explain what that actually means, because no one explained it to me.
Right.
I just kind of got a revelation that this is a great platform because they're not the man they used to be, but they're not who they want to be. But it's a great opportunity for me to speak into their life and help them where they are, and it's worked so far.
Well, let me explain it to you this way. You have the addict who is actively using 30 bundles of heroin a day, injecting it or inhaling it, develops this habit, realizes that he or she no longer wants to be actively using, so they come to the methadone program. And the program is designed to stabilize this individual. In other words, they prescribe medical-assisted treatment is exactly that. They prescribe them methadone. The methadone, in turn, enables them to weather through the storm, so to speak, of the withdrawals that's going to happen to them physically as they begin to use less and less opioids, which is the heroin itself, until eventually they become stabilized. Once they become stabilized, there's no longer a physical addiction to the actual heroin. At that point, the clinician, the counselor, is able to begin to create a treatment plan that's created between the patient and the clinician, and that is agreed upon as mutual goals and objectives are established. At that point, they're able to begin to work towards what they call total abstinence, if that is what the patient has in mind. There's also a module where we talk about harm reduction. Some people, their game plan is not to get off of the medicine that is assisting them. Others, their game plan is to eventually taper down and off the program. At the end of the day, we have to meet the patient where they're at.
Yeah, so the patient pretty much makes the decision on what type of treatment that they actually want within their lives.
Right, and some people oppose that, don't understand that, but here it is. Who knows the patient's life better than the patient?
Right.
The patient. The patient knows his life or her life.
So now there's parents out there that have their children, and I'm not talking about just children as teenagers and things to that effect, or young adults. I'm talking about some of them have children that are 30, 35, 40 years old. And they're caught up in this, treatment. They're caught up in this addiction and recovery and everything else. And they see their individual, their loved one, their child, caught up in it in a way that they can't understand why they still want to stay in it.
Right.
And in reality, it's their choice to not want to break free from it or break away from it.
Well, that's one of the barriers I was talking about.
Yeah.
Inadequate education and training on behalf for the parents. But if they get trained and they begin to understand,
I think that's the key, if they
if
get
they
trained.
get
A lot
trained.
of people that just don't know.
no, are not willing to go the extra mile to understand. I understand that the stigma, if taken the way that it is prescribed, like any other medicine, it'll work.
Yeah,
But if it's abused,
right,
like any other medicine,
right.
then it'll have adverse effects.
So if let's say they're on methadone and it's balancing them out so that they can function in a more appropriate way,
Right.
but yet the addict, the addictive behavior is not being worked on or not being treated, because that's a behavior issue. That's not going to change in the sense of a person, that the person has to want to change that area of their life.
Correct.
So if they're still popping pills,
Right.
if they're still drinking, if they're still doing other things
Right.
on top of the medical treatment,
Right.
this is where a major problem comes. So you're treating one thing,
Right.
but the addictive behavior
Is another.
is a whole nother thing.
And this is where I believe, I like to say to the patients that bring up the conversation of God, our moral compass was damaged when we were using. In other words, it became right if it allowed us to get high, and it became wrong if it didn't let us get high. So we made right and wrong according to the ability to keep on getting high.
Right.
So when we come into recovery, there has to be a recalibration. Right has to become right, and wrong has to become wrong, always. That's where God comes in.
Yeah.
See, our moral compass has to be recalibrated. And when we bring them to the Word of God,
Yeah.
when we bring them to the 12 steps of recovery, we provide them with another view of life. And we help them, if they're willing to embrace it.
Yeah.
I embraced it, and millions of other people around the world have embraced it. And our clocks, and that inner right or wrong got recalibrated. And now we know, not because we're such righteous people, but because we live according to a certain set of standards now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where the Word of God comes into play.
Yeah. And, and it's amazing that you mentioned that about, the moral compass, because the truth of the matter is that before I got clean, I didn't understand what that even meant. Moral
Right.
meant whatever I was feeling at that moment. And it didn't necessarily mean addiction either. It meant street life, it meant
Right.
party life, it meant just whatever was on the agenda for
That's
that
it.
day.
That's right.
That was my moral compass.
Correct.
But to do life on life's terms, you have to come to a place where there's some type of stability.
Correct. Before the
And,
mind
yeah.
could even get there,
Yeah,
we have to stabilize the patient.
yeah,
In other words, the patient has to be willing to become stabilized and do whatever it takes to get there. And once he or she is there, then the real work begins.
yeah,
The behavior, like you said, because the drugs are gone.
yeah,
We're not making all these decisions because the drugs are in us now. I like to say, you know what? A lot of people, including myself, we did things. We hurt the people that we loved. We didn't want to. We didn't mean to. But that doesn't excuse the behavior. It happened because we were actively using or actively living the lifestyle of an addict. Those were the symptoms of our disease: the breaking people's hearts, the lying, the cheating, the stealing, the robbing. All these things were just symptoms of the disease of addiction. Every disease has a symptom.
Yeah.
These were some of ours. And when we finally got the medicine and we finally started taking care of ourselves and we started doing what they call harm reduction, then some of us leading into total abstinence, and the mind became clear of the drugs, then we were able to, honestly take a look at ourselves, and that's a process.
yeah. It's when you start asking questions to a person and they have to answer in reference to what do you want in the future? What do you want to do with your life? What are your dreams? What do you desire?
Right.
And when you start asking them that question, it literally kind of wakes things up in them, because they actually stumble over it for a couple of minutes because they gave up on some of that, because they're thinking that this is attached to the future.
This is who I am.
Yeah, exactly. This is who I am.
This
When in reality,
identifies
this
who I
doesn't.
am.
It's your new identity.
Right.
But I believe with all my heart, and I'm evidence of it, you're evidence of it, that a person doesn't have to accept the fact that this is their future.
Now, what I like to say is when I speak to my patients or people at the church where I pastor, I like to tell them that this just defined a couple of chapters in your life.
Yeah.
The book of your life is still unwritten. This isn't who you are. This is who we became because of the choices and decisions that we made.
Yeah.
Now, in order for a person to even get to the point where you're talking about, where their minds could actually begin to start to process those questions, we got to get them stable.
Yeah.
Some people can do it just, this is it for me, I'm not going to do it no more. They put it down, they never touch it again. But that's very rare. Some people need to go to inpatient programming, outpatient program, and without any medical assisted treatment. Others need it. I've seen it work. I've had people come to me, and not for me, but for the glory of God, and give me a hug and say, "Thank you, Ralph. I really appreciate everything you've done for me." And I always give God the glory for it. And I also say, "No, you did this." But they wouldn't have been able to do it if the medicine, meaning the methadone or the Suboxone or the naltrexone or the buprenorphine, wasn't there for them. They wouldn't have been able to do it without it.
Because the clarity would have never been there.
They would have never reached it. Their bodies would have never, listen, they would have been too afraid, that's the thing, too afraid to go through the physical withdrawals. Listen, if a person doesn't know what it's like to go through physical withdrawals from opiate addiction, you can't understand the fear, the nausea, the bodily waste, doing number 2 and things of that nature, the shakes, the sweats, the cramps. You just feel like you're dying. Listen, an opioid-dependent individual, the fear of having to go through that, it takes them to this one line where they finally right there, and then they turn right back around and start using again. And all this used to happen until methadone was introduced to the opioid user, until Suboxone, and even recently the shot, the Vivitrol. I mean, and listen, these are all stopgap measures, but if used correctly, when used correctly, let me say, they've helped to change so many lives.
What would you say, I want to kind of shift it a little bit here.
Okay.
What would you say to myself, you being a clergy, what would you say, because I love the fact that you're on both sides of this, you know what I mean? And it's very important. It actually brings balance to my life because I see what I see. And I'm in my Bible, I'm in my, I do what I do. I'm a pastor, but I'm on the front lines too, and I'm among everybody in this island, in every organization, to serve them in any way that I can.
That's it.
So I see the pain and I embrace the pain and I love on people. That's just what I've been doing. Right. And in it, I'm learning a lot by watching, by seeing, and the reality is that what is it that you can say to pastors, priests, the clergy of Staten Island, leadership in the Christian faith or even in the Muslim faith, or just, in general, that would look at the epidemic maybe with a bad eye, or maybe look at it as a demonic thing, or maybe look at it for, I believe with all my heart that there's a spiritual side to this, but I also believe that we need to understand, you touched on it a little bit, but what would you say directly to the clergy of Staten Island in reference to becoming more effective for their people in their church, for the people in their church that are praying for their loved ones, and how could we help them?
Well, I can't speak for the church, but I could only speak for me as a pastor and as a man of God, as a child of Christ. I personally believe that the Lord provided man with the knowledge that he was going to require in order to, like I stated earlier, create doctors and physicians and people much smarter than myself to create the medicine that was going to be needed to help to treat these mental health disorders. I mean, that's not my lane, and I know where I end. So thankfully, there are those who are better suited than myself to treat this area. And as a pastor, I have to know when I'm treating somebody in my church where I am as a pastor. If, in fact, there is a mental health disorder and all I want to do is pray for this person, I understand the sentiment. I believe wholeheartedly that God could heal all things. But I also believe personally that I am providing a disservice to this member of my church simply because I don't know anything about mental health. So at that point, my mind is, then I will look for mental health, people in the mental health field, meaning psychiatrist or psychologist or mental health therapist, and that are Christian-based, if that makes you feel better. And because then you know, and I know, that they will be approaching the mental health issue via in the incorporation of the Word of God, in addition to the medicine that he or she, meaning the patient in need, may require to deal with the bipolarism, schizophrenia, and anxiety, depression, and things of that nature. That I, as a pastor, I am not, I don't hold any degrees. I'm not that intelligent. I'm not that well versed. I mean, I could have an idea, kind of, sort of, but being kind of, sort of, doesn't heal the disorder.
That's pretty powerful, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I believe with all my heart, and I know quite a few pastors and priests in Staten Island, and I know that the sincerity of wanting to help as many people as we can,
Right.
it's there.
Right.
But sometimes we get caught holding on to our faith only, and not allowing ourselves to educate ourselves in the areas that need to be educated. Doesn't mean that there should be no taboo.
Right.
There should be no gap.
Right.
Where if anything, faith in who we are should actually be at a service to those that are doing mental illness, those that are doing managing addiction and the treatments that they're doing. We should actually be serving them. And why do I say that is because we bring a piece of the puzzle that is literally life-changing on the inside.
Right.
The inner man, I believe in being whole, body, soul, and spirit.
That's what
And
we
so-
call the holistic approach.
Yeah, and so we bring that major piece to this puzzle.
Correct.
And so by disconnecting ourselves from it and not embracing it doesn't mean we need to agree with everything.
Right.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because in defense of the clergy, there is concerns about, can mental health or mental illness or mental assessment go to the extreme?
Right.
Can managing addiction go to an extreme? I think that happens in all these fields.
I agree.
And I think this is where we need to be able to discern how we stay in our lane, like you say, right?
It's
and that's
important.
what I was taught that when I was doing the recovery coaching and SERPA and stuff.
Stay in your
Stay
lane.
in your lane. Ruth
Stay in your
Riddick,
lane.
she kept telling us, you stay in your
Stay
lane.
in your
And I
lane.
agree with that. We
I
don't
do
want to
too.
cross lanes, but I do believe each lane finds a way to serve one another because we complement one another.
The beauty of it all is, I'll just take it to the job, as a counselor, when I make the referral, we stay in touch with one another. We call that facilitating the coordination of care. It isn't that there's a big gap there. I'm the counselor, I'm dealing with the substance abuse problem. She's the mental health therapist, she's dealing with the mental health area. And if the person goes to Celebrate Recovery, then you know what, I'll sign a consent form so I can stay in touch with Pastor Joe. It's in the best interest of the patient. The person knows that he's being treated on every area of his life, hence the growth begins to happen. Body, mind, and soul. We can't just fix one area. We need to fix the three areas that God created man in, body, mind, and soul. To treat one and not treat the other means the other two stay sick. Treat two and not one, the body still stays sick.
Yeah.
Treat all three in a holistic way, understanding it's all about harm reduction until eventually you get the person to where he or she wants to be. In my humble opinion, that is the best approach. The addict already knows that he's an addict. He already knows that he has a mental health issue. We don't have to keep reminding him of that. What we need is solutions. Solutions that are going to work for the person. That's my humble opinion.
There's a lot of people that are out there right now, and this conversation is going to continue in a greater way, on a greater scale. And they're going to put that poster back up again, and it is in reference to this conference that's about to take place on October 26th. It's a Saturday. It's at 9 a.m. to 12 noon. It's going to be hosted at 1020 Tar G, which is the parking lot area. It's a sanctuary. It's the parking lot area of Christian Pentecostal Church. They're going to be hosting the event. We fit around 1,000 people in this place. The YMCA is going to be there, and the district attorney's office is going to be there. TICE is going to be there. There's going to be Oasis is going to be there. Mental health assessments are going to. There's a lot of professionals that are going to be there. And we're going to have a lot of conversations and a lot of questions that are going to be asked that day. And everyone is going to be bringing their resources at this event. So I want to encourage you to get in touch with us at celebratehopenyc.com or you can go to our Facebook page, Celebrate Hope SI, and get more information. God bless you.
God bless you.